Let's jump into this week's topic. And I think it's a really interesting one, pretty topical. Is crime affecting Melbourne property? Is crime affecting the Melbourne property market? It's something that I think I've started to see a lot more in social media. I'm starting to see it a lot in all of those Facebook groups that I'm in. So many Facebook groups of different LGAs. I think it's a really good way to get a bit of an understanding of the community, which is probably a little tip there for people that are looking in certain suburbs or areas. But a lot of people posting photos of their homes getting robbed and cars getting stolen and whatnot. And then I thought, in the spirit of this episode, it'd be good to just do a little bit of a research on, is crime actually increasing, or is it something that's just in the media at the moment? But I found September, there was Crime Statistics Agency has released its annual data, and they've said that overall there's a 40% increase in theft and theft from motor vehicles, which is pretty insane. That's 40% increase. Like, that's just a wild number. And then in that same article, the Victoria Police said that 5,400 repeat offenders are responsible for 40% of the crime in the state, which
Yeah.
is it's insane, isn't it?
It's just, yeah, it is insane. And like, you guys are probably going to hear some opinions here, and that's what having a platform is for. But yeah, you saw the police commissioner, and we don't want to be political or anything like that, but you saw the police commissioner get up last week or the week before, and he poured out like a box of rocks, and you could tell he was just so frustrated. And the rocks were a visual representation of what the police are dealing with at the moment, and that's what was thrown at them. So these little rat bags just causing chaos around Melbourne, getting out on bail or not even having bail. It's just, yeah, no worries. You get locked up for 5 minutes. They figure out that you're 15 or you're under the threshold age, and you're out on the street, and they don't even care. They're just back straight doing the thing. And it's become a game now. Like, it's a game to them. It's fun to them. Like, they're daring one another to go and do stuff. And yeah, like, I saw yesterday some kid got smashed on one of those bikes, like riding around as well, because I'm sure they're associated, like they're in the same groups in terms of the ones
Mm.
that are just causing chaos. But yeah, it's pretty scary out there. You read the news and you can understand why this is a topic and like why we wanted to talk about it, because it is affecting people's decisions on what they're purchasing, what they're spending, and then like certain areas as well.
Yeah, and truly. And mate, I had my car that was someone went through my car last week. I went to gym in the morning and it had clearly been rummaged through and they'd ripped apart my service book, and I thought it was pretty obvious that they were looking for a spare key. So definitely don't keep spare keys in your service books. I know that's when they're given when you purchase new cars. And even then it was alarming because I just never assumed that it happens to you. But then also I had my car gone through, but we've got some close friends that live in Chadston, and they got robbed. They had either one or two people broke into their home with masks at 5 p.m. and they ended up getting a spare key from that was left on like the kitchen table from when he just got home from work, and they figured out how to get the garage door open from inside and then stole their car. And since then, they've put up cameras and they've had one a month of people trying to break in like the middle of the night. And it's not as serious as what that one was. It's not like people in balaclavas and masks trying to smash down the doors, but it's just opportunistic people walking up to the front door or the back door in the middle of the night and seeing if it's left unlocked and like trying to jimmy things open and squeeze their way in. And yeah, so it's insane. And they're just two anecdotal experiences of stuff that we've seen, like personally, over the last couple of months. And I'm looking at the footage from just a friend, and they're not feeling as safe. And this week we've just spoken with some new clients, and they don't live in Melbourne, and they're looking to move to Melbourne. And the number one thing that they care about is safety. They're like, we want to get as much data as we can in all the suburbs. He works overseas a bit, so his partner's going to be left home, and I just want to make sure that she's safe and that nothing happens to her. And I mean, that makes total sense to me. And even the clients that we're buying for, I've noticed that a lot more of them are trying to improve safety on the homes that we're buying, which it just hasn't been a conversation in recent years. That's like they want to improve their fences. They want to add more secure side gates. They want to turn the carport into a garage to make it blocked off from the front of the home. They want to add cameras. They want to add security doors. All of this is stuff that is a new conversation to us. So I think it's important for us to just have a review and give some updates on what people are thinking and what you can do as well. And I know that it's something that you've seen speaking to
Yeah,
buyers
it's
recently.
it's on people's minds. Like I went to Autobarn the other day and there's a guy in there asking for a club lock, right? So club lock is the old school thing that you put across your steering wheel so people can't move it.
Mhm.
And a lot of new cars these days, it has an automatic lock on it. So like the steering wheels get locked and then you have to use the key to unlock it. And then obviously all of the security that goes on with immobilizers. But there's easy way to access all the new cars because they've got so much technology in them, they can bypass that and open the cars really easily.
Mm.
Yeah, this old school method, put the club lock on and you can't move the car. So people are going back to that. And that was sold out too. Like that it was a 3 week wait.
What?
3 week wait on getting a club lock at Autobarn in Campbell.
Oh, it's nuts, isn't it?
It's crazy, right?
It's
Um,
absolutely nuts.
and then we're building in Glen Iris and we actually removed the side lights. It wasn't my decision. Like my partner, she was just like, yeah, actually, you know what? Let's remove those side lights because it was essentially a side light is a piece of glass either side of the door. So we had the big door in the
Yeah,
middle
yeah.
and then there was a side light. And she was like, can we just get that bricked in? So there's no way to smash the door, smash the window, and then just pop the door open. Because that's what a lot of
Mhm.
them do is just, yeah, pop that little window and then they can reach around and open the door quite easily. Even in my own situations where we're thinking about that, which I had not even thought about, but she's a female thinking about safety while I travel a bit. She's going to be at home by herself. And then my cousin as well. So 3 instances in about a week. My cousin, we're helping her purchase at the moment, and she's looking around Essendon and Oak Park and Glenroy and things like that. I was like, oh, for your money, like you could probably get a little villa unit. I love a villa unit, one of three, one of four. And yeah, like, why don't you buy something like that? And she was like, no way. Like, safety these days, like, all I'm thinking about is me being in this place by myself. Like, she's a single girl purchasing. She wants two better. And she said it has to have a basement. I want to have secure gates, touch pads everywhere. You just go into your garage, go into the lift straight up and into your apartment. She doesn't want ground floor either. And yeah, it's just these purchasing decisions and that people are making now and more cautious of when they're choosing a property.
And that makes total sense. And in terms of this topic, how is it affecting the Melbourne property market? Like all property markets, but that is just a massive driver right there because people are now considering, and what like we might look at as saying like, all right, if we're purely looking for an investment, you want to get more land, but that's not what's on people's mind at the moment. Safety does trump investment fundamentals for properties that you're going to live in. For a lot of people, everyone's different, but it's definitely something that's on a lot of people's minds. And even in the past, I've had typically when purchasing like an apartment in a South Yarra or a market that's a walkable suburb, it used to be it's actually great to get ground floor because of like downsizes. You don't need to have any
Courtyards, like,
stairs, like courtyards, you get
yeah.
more bang for your buck. But even over the last couple of years, I've had a lot more people say that they'd only look at first floor and up, first or second floor. If it's an older style walk up flat, like you don't have lifts, but still, it's you want to make sure that the balcony, you can't climb onto the balcony or just like break in through the back door if it's ground floor, which makes total sense to me. And then you've got to start thinking about those things, even from an investment fundamental. Who are the buyers going to be in the future? What are people thinking about? Why are things priced the way that they are? If you see something that's on the first floor sell for more than the ground floor, it might not have always been the case, but it could definitely be now. And that's one of the like major driving factors. So, mate, it's very interesting what people are thinking about. And then even when you're looking at houses, it's like safety is one of the, as an example, actually. So we bid at an auction 2 or 3 weeks ago in Hyatt. And one of the things that was advertised cleverly by the agents was that it was a really safe designed home because at the front of the property, they had giant, would have been like 7 foot fences that were motorized on key fobs the whole way. So if you're walking past this property on the street, you can't even see it because the front fence was so high and secure. And that was something that they were marketing as being like a key part of the home. You're on a great street and it's like such a safe and secure layout, perfect for raising a family or if you've got young kids. And I can tell you what, if you're a parent with young kids, that would probably really drive you. Maybe you do spend the extra 30 grand to get into a property like that because it's not cheap to put a whole front fence on a property and you've got to go through council and get permits and everything as well. So it's, yeah, another way that this property values can be driven.
Yeah, it sucks, right? It sucks that people are making well, that's their first choice now, is all about safety. And for a lot of people it has been, but I think it's just more front of mind just with
Mm,
everything that's going on in the media, and like you can't get away from it. You just have to go under a rock if you wanted to avoid any news around it. I don't really want to look at the news. I don't watch Channel 9 or like any mainstream media at all. But you go on social media and it's just everywhere. You know what I mean? Like another break in, a bloody some
mm.
kid attacking another kid with a machete. And it's, yeah, it definitely registers when you're going through this process and like going into certain areas as well. What would you look at in terms of assessing an area?
Yeah, and I think that's probably a key part to take away is that there is things that you can do to check off suburbs from a high level as well. So I'll see if I can share my screen, and if you're listening on, I'll do my best to explain everything. But if you're watching this on YouTube, then you can see exactly some of the things that we look at. Can you see that?
Yep.
Awesome. So there's a few things that we'll check when looking at areas. One of them is going to be the social housing scores. So, look, social housing isn't everything. I'm not saying that social housing and crime are directly correlated, but you will find in some suburbs where there is a higher percentage of social housing, there will be a higher percentage of crime. So, if I look at an area like Richmond, for example, again, Richmond has got a reasonable high level of crime. It's not in all of Richmond, and you'll see that there is some sections where there's social housing towers, where the social housing is at 93% of this SA1 region. So SA1 region as well is pretty much the most localized council data that is available. You can find this from free sources. It's just not going to be in a visual heat map like what I'm showing you, which is why we pay for a lot of access to data that a lot of buyers might not be able to get access to. And this is some of the stuff that we look at and share with clients as well. So, social housing score is one of the top things that we'll look at. And you could see that just looking at this across some of the regions, like there is just pockets of suburbs that have significantly higher concentrations as opposed to the rest of the suburb, right? So it's in all of the blue chip areas, it's in all of the major regions of Boroondara and Stonington, but you'll see that there is certain sections, like if we look here, this is like a certain pocket of Ashwood and Chadstone where it is significantly higher than all surrounding areas, right? This would be the first thing that I'd say. Don't make this your one and only metric for decision making, but I think checking social housing records is an important thing to look at. The next thing that we'd look at is a social profile score. So if I flip this over, you'll see that the heat map completely changes, but there is going to be certain correlations between certain pockets with social housing. Again, looking at the same area in Richmond. Now, probably good to describe what social housing is. So this is for anyone that's just listening. It's described as an index of relative socio-economic advantage and disadvantage. It's an Australian Bureau of Statistic measure that ranks areas based on residents' economic and social conditions. A higher ERSAD score indicates greater advantage, higher incomes, education levels, and skilled occupations, while a lower score suggests greater disadvantage, lower incomes, unemployment, and less access to resources. So this is just something that is used as an overall metric for just checking the demographics of suburbs. And you'll typically find that the crime correlations are with lower areas as opposed to higher areas. It's a very big generalization, but we do need to take generalizations when looking at some of this data to get a good understanding of the sort of people that are living there. And you'll see, as an example, if I was to go and show you some of the more northern areas, you'll see from our heat map, there's essentially like reds and oranges, which is a lower social profile score. If I was to put that directly next to social housing, there's not a direct correlation. So a lot of those areas in Fawkner and Hadfield have got pretty much zero social housing, whereas if you were to look at the social profile scores, they don't have the same sort of level of correlation, right? So again, you can't look at any one metric and say that is the be all and end all, but some of them are important. And the final one that I'd say just from this data set here that we look at is also just owner occupier rates. So typically would want to have a higher percentage of owner occupiers. And when we say higher percentage, I'd typically be trying to look at over 70%. So 70% is the number. 30% renters in a suburb is very normal. And I'd say that's a very healthy metric. Whereas anything that is when you get to the stage of 20% of people in the Melbourne CBD own their homes, whereas 80% are renting, it's just a very different sort of demographic and population out there. And again, for those looking, you can see that these numbers just vary massively from suburb to suburb. It's something important to look at. Do you look at anything else in here when you're referencing stuff?
Probably not for social housing or, yeah, understanding a certain area. Like you've covered all those main points. Definitely used to use like walk scores and those types of things to, yeah, understand how walkable a suburb is. But yeah, and that has a safety attachment to it. But there's also that other government website, right? Like the
Correct.
crime statistics or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the other one that you can look at, which is completely free, it's a Victorian site, is crimestatistics.vic.gov.au. And this is a site that essentially breaks down crime levels on an LGA basis. So you could see at the moment, I've got just the Boroondara region that's opened up. What this will do, it will show you essentially where crime incidents that have been recorded are currently over essentially a 10-year span. Pretty alarming statistic, which I think is insane. Boroondara has a 30.5% increase in crime incidents recorded compared to this time last year.
Yeah. It's nuts.
30%.
Yeah.
That's an insane jump for crime.
What's Stonington? If you flick to Stonington.
If we have a look at Stonington, Stonington has a 26.2% increase as well compared to the other areas. And like
As
this
volume, it's much higher. So like 11,000 incidents. I think Boroondara was 7,000.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, Stonington has Chapel Street and those types of areas, South Yarra. They do have a
Correct.
lot of social housing areas where,
Correct.
yeah, Boroondara wouldn't have as many.
Yeah. And you can actually see a little bit of the breakdown as well when you're looking on this government websites. For example, this particular, when we're looking at Stonington now, it tells you the top 5 suburbs where these incidences are recorded: South Yarra, Paran, Malvern East, Windsor, and then Toorak in that order. And that ranges from South Yarra having 2,834 crime incidents recorded down to Toorak at just 729. Now, geographically, Toorak is actually a larger suburb, but in terms of the amount of residents and the population density, South Yarra is significantly higher.
Yeah.
Then it tells you where these crimes are occurring. So the number one for Stonington is the street or lane or footpath. So essentially on the street is where it's happening. Whereas some of the other LGAs that I've looked at, it's actually at the home. So it's street, lane / footpath, which I'm gonna have a stab in the dark and say not a stab in the dark literally, even though that's what we're talking about. But I'm gonna say that it's probably Chapel Street, right? If South Yarra has got the highest incidence of crime, and then Paran and 281 for street, lane, footpath, that's probably a fairly high
and it's
level.
So that top one, steal from a car, like steal from a motor vehicle, if that's all in the same line as a street footpath. So yeah, a lot of properties don't have off-street parking. So if you go the back end of South Yarra or a lot of suburbs within Armidale, Malvern, Paran, like there's no off-street parking. So these people are having to park on the street. And yeah, someone walks along, smashes the window, sees what's there. That's just what's going to happen, unfortunately. And then, yeah, if you look at, say, Malvern East, I reckon that would be Chadstone. So there'd be a lot of issues at Chadstone because it's enormous. So yeah, how much stuff goes on at Chatty? Heaps.
Correct. Yeah. And so, even like from the location, it's street is the first one, then house, then flats or unit or apartment, then retail, and then shopping complex. So, again, I've got to say that Stonington would probably have a pretty high correlation with Chapel Street. Like, if we compare that specifically to Boroondara, the number one in Boroondara is home. So that's house is number one, and then street, then retail, then flat or unit apartment, and then driveway / carport. pretty big difference. And that's theft from a motor vehicle is the number one. So that's like cars getting broken into. The number one for Boroondara is Hawthorne suburb, which is quite a geographically large suburb as well. And you do have a lot of apartments in there as well. And then a lot of those apartments don't have parking too. I had a friend that lived in Hawthorne, and he had his car broken into 2 or 3 times and had all of his tools stolen. So he was a tradie, and he had a lot. I think he had his tools stolen so many times that his boss was getting ready to fire him because it was so hard for him to work. But that's just because he had to park on the street in Hawthorne. Pretty insane statistics for here. But I'd say, look, this is another great sort of metric to check. And we'll put the links for this in the show notes as well so that you can have a look through this for yourself. It's got all of the local government areas in Victoria. It's also got the offences recorded and a bunch of other pieces of information that is quite useful. And it does have a bit of a heat map as well. It's not as intricate as what we've seen on our sort of stash platforms. That's got a lot more in-depth data, but for free data from the state, I think it's quite brilliant. So yeah, three good things to check. And then I suppose finally as well, whilst the suburbs are very important, I think it is just super important to consider the actual property itself. So as we're talking about with property types, like they are going to have a major effect over the coming years. Is crime's like such a rampant issue and it's in the headlines a lot more. I think it's going to be something that you should really be thinking about as well.
100%.
Cool. Thanks for tuning into How's the Market. If you did enjoy today's episode, we'd love it if you could leave a quick review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. It really helps more people find the show. For more tips, tools, and real talk in the Melbourne property market, head over to www.tommy.com.au and you can join the mailing list. Until next week, we'll see you guys then. Bye.
See ya.